Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Coach Jason. So I want to continue on the mode of the videos that we've been talking about recently, that I've been talking about in terms of training paces, why it's important, and to train at the right paces. I mean, all of my videos, they're based in not only experience but science, and I do all the calculations, and the stuff is accurate. But again, I say this in a lot of my other videos too. It's very important to train at the right paces based on your current fitness or your athlete's current fitness or the right intensities or whatever you want to call it. Now, how do you do that? I've talked about it in a lot of other videos. There's 2 videos down below in the description. Make sure you watch them in their entirety. 1 mile time trial and how to set the right training paces for that, based on for everything based on what you run for the 1 mile time trial, to make sure that everybody's training at the appropriate training range, pace ranges, and everybody's recovering the way that they should be recovering. But I want to go into a little bit further detail today, okay? So we'll move it over here. Get over to the board here. It's up and ready. Okay, I'm going to slide over. And where's my little pointer? It's actually a scratcher, but whatever. And training intensity and training paces. So, and this is, whether you're a middle distance runner or a distance runner, although some of this stuff is ideal for half milers and milers, it's a really good way of really enhancing fitness. This still works and applies to everybody, okay? Again, it relates to training intensity and training paces. It relates to the speed and the pace that you train at, particularly for the AT, which is the anaerobic threshold, and the ANT, which is the anaerobic threshold, okay? If your aerobic threshold, anaerobic threshold, they're different from each other, but they're both very, very, very important, okay? And make sure you take a look at the videos that I've recently done about anaerobic threshold and aerobic threshold, because I break it down and tell you the similarities and the differences between the two, which will make this video much easier to understand. Okay. Again, I mentioned this already, and I mention it all the time. It's like beating a dead horse, but it's one of the most important things you can do. It's important to train at the appropriate training intensity that's commensurate with your current fitness. Okay. If you're a 5-minute miler now, it's important to train between the 5-minute and 4:50 range, okay? Moving forward, not at the 4:30 range. Now, there's an outlier. There's somebody, on occasion, there's somebody who can progress that quickly. Great. But that's not the norm, okay? So if you want to keep progressing, it's important to, take that next block, okay? If you're a 17-minute 5K runner, it's important to train from 17 minutes to 16:30. Not yet go after 16 flat or 15:45, okay? Again, it has happened before, but if you're training at the right ranges and kind of incrementally taking your steps forward, then you're not only, gradually getting better and keeping healthy, but you're putting yourself in the right position to make the best decisions possible, okay? And then you'll be in a position to run your best when it counts the most, okay? I talk about this a lot too. It's very important to avoid increasing volume and intensity at the same time. Laying out your training is important, okay? If you're going to train at 50 miles for a week for the whole year, that's fine. And if you're doing that, then you make modifications in the training, you increase intensity. If you want to go up, you go up no more than 10%, which you go from 50 to 55. But I wouldn't recommend going up much further than that until you give your body or your athletes a chance to adapt to it. Once they start plateauing, and that's an indication to either increase volume or the intensity of the training. And also, and keep in mind too, it's important to see whether you're, based on, I like to use a 1 mile time trial, even 3K, if how they are for longer races, how they are for shorter races, because that could be a plateau point too. If they're closer to the longer races than they are in terms of equivalent performance than they are the shorter races, then it's a sign to improve speed development. Okay, if they're closer to the shorter race equivalent than the long run, that's an indication to start doing more aerobic threshold, anaerobic threshold type work. So these are good indicators that give you a lot of information as a coach or an athlete. That's why I talk about all these things too, because then it allows you to kind of build your foundation, and put the puzzle pieces together. Okay, into a system that works for you and your athletes. So the anaerobic threshold and the aerobic threshold work together to elevate your maximum cardiac output, okay? And particularly the anaerobic development part of it plays a key role in this process, okay? Anaerobic is, and it's crazy because you'll see I've seen a lot of times with training, it's when to do the anaerobic, it's when to do the aerobic, how much of it to do, how to kind of combine the two, how to move from one to the other, being the dominant theme for the cycle. So those things come into play too, okay? But it doesn't really matter unless you've built a foundation behind it, before it, okay? It's kind of like, and I mentioned it's kind of a silly analogy, but it's kind of like baking a cake. You can't put frosting on it if it hasn't been fully baked, okay? Bake the cake, run that base, get in that work so that we can do a lot of the fine tuning along the way, and then repeat or modify, okay? And this, the anaerobic development and combining them working together, helps facilitate max heart rate training, which is VO2 max, okay? VO2 max is very important, particularly with marathoners, particularly with middle distance runners, okay? It's in ideal training paces for middle distance runners, particularly for half milers and milers, to maximize the consumption of this oxygen is 3K pace to 5K pace. Doing workouts at like 3K pace, doing workouts at 5K pace, no slower, and also no faster. If you go faster, then you're starting to kind of enter the anaerobic zone, and you're not really getting any additional benefit. Okay, if the focus is VO2 max, stay within the VO2 max range for that workout. Okay, and again, like I said, anything faster, you start to rely on the anaerobic system, and you're not guaranteed to get any additional benefit. So, doing workouts like 6 to 8 by 800, okay, at 5K pace down to 3K pace, 5 to 6 times 1,000, 4 to 5 by 1,200, 3 to 4 times a mile. Okay. Now again, it comes out to about 15 to 20 minutes maximum. Okay, for a given workout at 3K pace or 5K pace. You don't want to do any more than that. So this essentially, if it's 6 times an 800 at 230, that's 15 minutes. If it's 8 of them at 230, it's 20 minutes. Just an example. And that's about 6,400 meters. This is 6,000 meters at 6, 6,000 meters at 5, 4 miles at 4. Okay, so you don't go beyond 4 miles, essentially, at that level anyway. And again, the recovery periods are about the equivalent as the time and interval being run. So if you're running half-mile repeats in 2:30, your rest period is 2:30. If you're running 1,000-meter repeats in, let's say, 3:20, that's approximately between 3 minutes and 3:20. So we want a flat number, 3 minutes. 1,200-meter efforts, again, 3 to 4 minutes recovery. Mile reps, 4 to 5 minutes recovery. But again, it's at these particular paces, 4 times a mile at 5K pace if you can. That's a little bit slower, VO2 max. Okay, and they're essentially, if you're training for the marathon, VO2 max reps are about 50 to 60 seconds faster per mile than what you're running for the marathon. So if you're looking around 3:30, which is 8 minutes per mile, VO2 max miles, you'd be doing 5 to 6 of them with like a 4 or 5 minute recovery. You'd be doing them in 7 minutes to 7:10. Yes, it's hard, but that's why you're only doing 5 or 6 of them. More along the lines of 5. So just wanted to go into this detail today, give you a little bit of insight into 3K and 5K pace workouts. Again, these are great workouts for middle distance runners, and you'll actually see. Take a look at some of my cross country programs, particularly for middle distance runners, and I have stuff like this. And then what I do is I kind of phase it in. If you have half milers or milers who are not running cross country, this is a great bout of work, but you also can tack on something back to the end of it, like a fast 400, and then a couple weeks later, 4 weeks later, you do another workout like this. You do a fast 600, and then a couple weeks later, like week 12, you do a workout like that, and then you do a fast 800, and you get to see how they're progressing along the way. But by phasing in that little piece, you're kind of giving them an opportunity to test themselves at their specialties. So, but without compromising anything, because they're getting good quality work. So, and what I mean by that, just to give you a little bit more details, let's say you're doing 4 times a mile, right? With a 5-minute recovery, and you get about 10 or 15 minutes in between. After that last one, you go to the track and run a 400. And the next time you shorten the reps to 1200s, 4 to 5. Let's just say 4 times 1200. Okay, and 4 times 1200 with about a 4-minute recovery. Then 10 to 15 minutes of active recovery, you go over to the track and you run a 600. So the longer reps are getting shorter, the middle distance reps getting longer. Okay, and then the last one, maybe 4 times 1,000 with a 3-minute recovery, and then you head over to the track after 15 minutes of active recovery. Then you run an 800 meters. It's a great way of testing them every so often, but at the same time getting in good quality work, which sets them up for later on. So that's how I would do it for middle distance runners. And again, that's how I would do the VO2 max miles for marathoners as well. But this is a very important video, so make sure you watch it again if you're not exactly clear. And if there's something that I haven't been clear about, let me know in the comments, and I'll give you a little bit more detailed explanation. So, but watch the anaerobic threshold video and the aerobic threshold video. You'll get a little bit more insight and understand this a little bit better. Okay, and then after this, I'm gonna go over how to lay out the training over a 24, 26 week period, depending on what you're doing, and how to basically, if you're going for 2 peaks a year, 2 major peaks, how to lay out the training so that you can accomplish that. So that's the next video. So hit that subscribe button and the notification so you don't miss out. Train hard. Have a great season. Be safe. Talk to you then.